Alright, so this is really, really dirty. Like, how does this part even get that dirty? This is really bad. The part here that says TRS-80 isn't dirty itself. It had tape over the front of it. The black for all the letters is actually still there, so it just needs cleaned. This is so bad, I'm gonna go rinse it off in the sink first and see how much work that does for me. Maybe scrub it a bit there, because yeah, it's a lot of dust in the cracks here to try and scrub out with paper towels on camera. So I'm gonna go do that, and I will be right back. Well, that almost entirely did it. Yeah, I went back and touched it up a little bit in a couple places with some isopropanol and magic eraser, also known as a melamine sponge. But yeah, I just want to go in these really dirty areas a little bit with some 409, because I think that'll help. But yeah, this came out pretty good. I didn't go to town on the glue on here. I don't know how well you'll be able to see. It's a really clean spot. Yeah, so there was tape or something put over where this says TRS-80. It's really not coming off very easily, and I don't want it to potentially strip off the silver paint like what has happened up here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and leave it there, because it's, you kind of have to know it's there to really see it. It's not that bad at all. So yeah, I'm calling that a massive improvement. Really didn't have to do much at all for this, so that's nice. You know what, while I've got this whole thing taken apart, I think I should just go ahead and clean it up. I was gonna test it to make sure it worked first, but I'd just be kind of doing more work than I need here. So yeah, let's see what we can do here. Okay, this thing is, like, really, really, really dirty. I don't know how it's so dirty. It is going to take a lot of work to clean this, totally. Wow. Yeah. Alright. Oh, there is still more I could do, but this is looking so much better. There are still things here and there, like this is just barely kind of a little bit dark there. There's a red mark here. There's a lot going on with the rear vents. But I want to move forward and actually get this thing fired up. I can finish cleaning this more on my own time. This is going to take a lot of time, and it's going to kill off a lot of sponges. This texture, I didn't really talk about it. I mentioned that this was a textured Model 3, but the thing is that it's really, really fine texture. It's like a super fine grained sandpaper, and it just shreds the magic eraser melamine sponge. So, but anyway, yeah, I made a huge improvement here, and if I put the badge back in, oh, it's starting to look really good. Yeah, I think it's time to put this thing back together enough to try firing it up and see what happens. Alright, I totally skipped over taking out the CRT board, but I will show you putting it back in here. This was just slightly annoying, so I didn't really want to film it while I was going along. But, yeah, it seems mostly easy until you get to the ground strap for the tube. So, the thing about that is, I will get to in a moment. both are hooked in. Oh, this anode cap is so gross. Ugh. That's part of why I did it off camera, because I could get that off. Thankfully, I have a whole bunch of 409 saturated paper towels nearby. Well, these are mostly dirt saturated too. Anyway, it was this. The ground strap is actually connected with a connector. It's this inline kind of terminal plug whatever thing. But the shrink tubing is glued on this side. Well, it's not shrink tubing, it's just vinyl tubing. It's glued to it on this side, and I couldn't get it to pull out. So, just kind of useless. Couldn't do anything with it. So, I just desoldered the wire. That was the best way of getting it out. So, yeah, I'll just undo that here, and then move along. Alright, then with that done, there's not a lot left that is challenging. Okay, now comes the fun part here where I have to connect this. I'm going to leave this in the traditional TRS-80 test position with the tube on its side over here once I have this connected, because I will never want to disconnect that again. So, let's see how this goes. I guess I'll want these disconnected so I can continuity test them, but yeah, hopefully this works. Well, I heard noises I didn't like, but the piece didn't seem to really move, so let's continuity test. Well, this one's cake. Ah! Success! Okay. We might be good. Oh, I am excited. Okay. Now, a successful power-up for a DT-1 would be just a cursor flashing right here. If I wanted it to be able to do something really quickly, I could put a jumper in the serial input-output over here to short the TX and RX of the RS-232 line. Then it would be in loopback. But first, let's see if we get the cursor. That beep was very terrifying. I was not expecting it, and all the lights dimmed. That's a cursor. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah! Oh, I'm very excited. Yeah, it's not going to do anything. Again, loop back, but... Oh, sweet, and that is a light. Oh. Oh, I'm happy. It is very likely working. Sweet. Wait a minute. I can make it do something. This is really obvious. Okay, get it. Start it up. Come on, blinky cursor. Okay. How do you enter setup? I should just be able to do that. Where's the manual? Okay. To set the I/O parameters or to see what key or what current settings, Control Shift Enter. Control Shift. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Boom. Working. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so excited. That is a lot of working, too. Character ROM's good. CRT chip's good. Intel 8051. Microcontroller's good. CRT connection's good. That is a full test. Everything is working. Oh, that rocks so much. I am unbelievably excited right now. Oh, man. Also, I was not expecting green. That's green. The only other picture of one of these I can see running online has a white phosphor tube. That's kind of cool. I'm happy it's green. I think that's better. Oh, this rocks. Well, I just wasted some time. So I have this USB to serial cable that's actually 25 pins, so I shouldn't need a 9-pin adapter, and it can do all of its full flow control stuff. But for the life of me, I couldn't get this to work. Now, it's not null modem as the issue, because I was trying it with a null modem adapter. Matter of fact, I kind of had to use this. You see how I shaved this down here? Well, the connectors in the rear for this thing are really narrow, so this plug wouldn't actually fit, and I had to go and shave the plastic off of this one with some power tools to get it to actually plug in. But it still wouldn't work. I tried setting it to ADM5 mode. That didn't work. I set the baud rate, parity, flow control, blah, blah, blah. Couldn't get it going. I'm going to save this for later on once I get this thing fully buttoned up and working. But the keyboard works. The interface, I think, will work later. The CRT board's working. Power supply is working. This thing's good to go. I should just clean up the keyboard and then it's pretty much done. I can button it up. I mean, I do have to do a little bit more cleaning. Like, I haven't done any cleaning on the bottom piece, but I can do that once it's put back together. It's not a big deal. But, yeah, this is starting to look really, really good. So I'm gonna shut her down, pull the keyboard out, and work on cleaning that. Oh, it's not going to be as bad as I was afraid of. I thought I wouldn't be able to remove the keys, but they do conveniently come off. They just take a bit of force. So now I got to go through and disassemble the entire keyboard. Well, just take off the keycaps. Frankly, I'm getting off easy, so that's not a big deal. And then put it back together. Interesting thing about the layout of this keyboard is it's normal. All of the symbols are where you'd expect. There's nothing weird going on. That's the terminal nature of this. The actual TRS-80s are not like that. Okay, it was worth just taking this out and going and cleaning it all and putting it back together. Oh, well, except for the stabilizer. There we go, that's the bit I did on camera. There we go. I could use a little bit more cleaning on top, but that's not a problem. Okay, looking good. I think I have no reason left to have this all apart. I mean, I could do a little bit more cleaning in here, but I'm going to be opening this up again later. I can do it then. I am getting, like, really, really excited here. Oh man, this thing, oh, yes, I really like this thing. But now I need to learn how to use it. Connecting to Linux is proving to be a little bit more difficult than I thought, so I'm going to take some time and actually try and figure out how you do that. So I will be back in a little bit once I've learned more about get-tty. Alright. I've got the DT-1 figured out for connecting to Linux, so we can go ahead and try it out. I'm not going to fully cover how to connect this to Linux in this video because I'm going to do a follow-up video about using this with modern Linux specifically, so I'll talk about that then. Just briefly though, you need to copy a systemd service file for Getty into your active systemd, folder it, enable it for the serial port you want to connect on, go in and configure the settings, then basically reboot the computer. It's not the simplest process. You don't just run a command. Before we begin using this, I think we should first cover how you configure the DT-1 to be usable with any host. So you open the configuration menu with Control-Shift-Enter. Then we have a grid of abbreviated names, and that's it. So you use the arrow keys on the number pad to navigate, and 1 and 0 to set stuff. Now, this is pretty easy, and then once you've made your changes, you hit enter, and then Y to accept, Control-Shift-Enter again to exit the menu, and then you're good. Now, let's go over everything that we have here, and I'm going to do a little bit more explaining than the manual does. Alright, the configuration menu here has quite a few options that can be confusing if you haven't worked with serial stuff on a low level. I'm going to go ahead and put a second video up on my channel where I explain all of these in detail, but let me just give you a brief overview by just pointing at the screen here. So these are your terminating characters. This lets you set line feed, carriage return, that kind of stuff. EM1 and EM0 let you set the terminal protocol mode. I've found that the ADDS25 and the, what was the other one? Hazeltine 1410 don't work well with Linux, so stick to Televideo 910 or ADM5, and Televideo 910 has been my favorite so far. Here we have reverse, which I'll just do because that one's visually identifiable. That makes the image horrible. I assume that would only be good for hosts that do a reverse image, and you want to undo that. Then we have hardware flow control parameters. You probably want to leave those off. Then we have serial packet structure. Here is how you would want to configure it for a modern system that uses 8 data bits, none parity, and 1 stop bit. You just leave the first 4 0 and the last 4 1. This is also 9600 baud. This can go faster. I haven't got that to work reliably. I don't know if it's my cable or this isn't really that good at it or what, so I would just maybe not bother with the faster. And then the last line are all settings that affect the DT-1 locally, so these don't send anything different over the serial protocol. It's mostly about how lines are wrapped or not and fed on the screen locally, and whether or not it repeats the characters on the screen as you type them rather than send them to the host and let the host send them back. You can also change the cursor type here. If I can change it to underline, and then we can see we have an underline flashing instead of a block, but I like the block, so I'm going to leave it like that. Next, before we move on, we should really talk about the keyboard, and I've logged into Linux, so I have something to type into. We'll get back to logging in initially, just I need to cover this first because there are a few gotchas here. Now, the terminal emulation mode affects more than just the protocol it sends. It also affects the keyboard layout. Now, this is the keyboard layout for the Televideo 910, and there are other keyboard layouts in here for the different emulation modes. So you'll want to look at the manual for the keyboard layout that correlates to the emulation mode you're using. The ADM3 is what Vim or VI was designed on, that used the HJKL keys for navigation. Now, this isn't just in VI. This was actually ported back to the terminals themselves. So if you hold Control in the Televideo and press these keys, you'll actually send the equivalent to the arrow control keys over here, because not all terminals had arrow keys. So you might need that depending on your setup. Also because the arrow keys require you holding Shift to use them, which is a bit of a pain, so just in case it's easier while you're on home row to hold Control, you can do that as well. There are also other things that can change, like the F keys and the break, clear keys, etc. So you want to make sure that you refer to the layout at least once when you choose one, that way you know what's going on. But with all that out of the way, we're now ready to actually use the DT-1. So it's a terminal. What are you going to do with it? Well, as a Linux user, I can just connect it to any Linux computer I have, given a USB or serial interface that allows me to physically plug it in. So I have it set up to log in to my MacBook here, and I can just log in. And there we go. I have a terminal prompt. I can do pretty much anything I want. Like, let's say ls USB, and now I can see the USB devices connected to it, and we can see my USB serial adapter here. So this is essentially the same thing as opening a terminal on Linux, but it's a literal physical terminal sitting in front of me. Now, if you want, you can do a lot of stuff in the terminal from Linux. Like, let's just take a look at one of the things that I like to do in the terminal, and that is do most of my development there. So I'm actually going to be working on a new version of the ATX to PC Junior adapter, and I can design the CAD files for the 3D printed components in the terminal. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use Vim to modify it, but I do kind of need to be able to see what's going on, so I'm going to open the file in OpenSCAD, which will appear on here as well. I'm going to open it as a background process, and there we go. Now we can see the file that I'm working on. Now I can use Vim, open the same file, and we can make some changes. So there are two versions to the ATX PC Junior, one that has the barrel jack for putting in the Pico PSU, and the other one that leaves a slot at the top for having an actual ATX power supply hanging off the back. So let's go ahead and configure this for the ATX version. Sometimes Vim doesn't load quite right on here, so I gotta change it. Now I'm going to delete letter, insert 0, and that will do it. Escape is right here, which takes a little getting used to. But as soon as I write this, bam, changes over there. So I can do my CAD work from the DT-1 and have it represented on a modern computer. That's pretty fun. But there's other stuff that you can do too. You know, IRC. You can use interface wrappers for like Twitter or Discord. So you could do a lot of stuff on here. It's obviously just an easy to use plain text editor for Vim. You could write notes or whole books if you really wanted to on one of these. It's just with the modern Linux computer, there's so much you can do. Now, some of the stuff that you might want to do would be a little bit more advanced, and you can run into some issues. So let me cover what I've done here. I'm actually running everything inside screen. So if I echo my term here, which is the terminal type, we can see I am actually using screen. I can quit this, and now if I run the same command again, we'll see that should be set. Why isn't that set? Well, let me show you some examples of what the problems are here. So, okay, this is connecting as a plain terminal over serial to the computer, and this has some problems. Now, I've noticed that some of the character escape codes don't work quite right. Let's open Vim again, and we'll take a look at my bash RC file. Also, it's beeping now. That's happening because the terminal actually sends a beep code at some intervals, doing certain things like I'm trying to tab and there's nothing there. It's going to send a beep code. Screen hides that and goes woof woof in the corner rather than beep, because beeping can be annoying. But we're going to leave this here. All right. So there are some problems. Now, we have a lot of extra white space in here, and that's because of the formatting that Vim is trying to do. So the color codes are showing up as a literal physical character rather than just changing the color, because it can't. It is doing underlines, which this supports, but it doesn't do that super cleanly. So what I'm doing to get around this is I have in my bash RC file, which is the file that is run every time you log in. Then if it sees that I'm logged in on a TVI 910 terminal, it will open bash with screen. What screen does is it wraps all of those bad escape characters and fixes them to match the terminal more accurately. This isn't the best way of doing it, and it does have some problems that I'll talk about, but this helps tremendously. So let's go ahead and quit this. Now take note of how there is space around the quote marks here. All right, let's do screen bash. Okay. Now, I also modified my prompt here, so it's a little bit smaller, and when I move into other subdirectories, it only shows me the base name, which is the current folder you're in, rather than the whole path, because it can get out of hand and fill up the whole screen, and it doesn't wrap, and it's a nightmare. Move down, and now we'll see the quotes are right next to the variables and strings. So these are now properly displaying, and part of the problem with that is you send character codes, your key presses, over the terminal, and as I move to the end of the line, it knows when I'm at the end of the line and it stops moving. When the terminal is displaying these extra white space characters, I'm getting to the end of the line before I'm actually getting to the end of the line, because this is physically longer now on the terminal, so it makes it impossible to use. You must wrap poorly behaving applications like this in screen, or you can't use it at all. Let me give you another example. NeoFetch is I don't have it installed on here. So let's learn how to install something. Sudo apt install NeoFetch. Okay. Here's a problem. When the characters codes are sent to move around the screen, it can really drag and slow down processes like that. Anyway, NeoFetch draws a pretty picture on the screen describing your system. Fine, but did you see what it did there exactly? So it draws this part first, then moves up and draws this part, rather than printing it all as one line. Kind of really lazy, actually, but you can see how it does that. That means that it's sending escape codes to reposition the cursor before these lines. Let's exit screen and run NeoFetch again and see what happens. Yeah, that didn't work right. And that's because the terminal is sending the wrong escape sequences. So wrapping everything with screen is the best way to go. Now, in case you don't know, bash is the command prompt application, let's just call it that, the shell, for Linux, usually. Well, that is the TRS-80 DT-1. I gotta say, I'm super happy with it. I don't care what faults it has. This thing is exactly what I wanted it to be. It is awesome. I love it. It could be VT100, but it doesn't have to be. I've got it working just fine, and like I said, I'll go into a little bit more detail on that, because there's some more specific Linux stuff you need to do, and it's not that bad. It's well worth using. But yeah, for a weird little terminal that didn't have a very long lifespan available as a product, it's really cool. And the whole, it's a TRS-80, but a terminal thing, oh man. I know there are a lot of pretty terminals out there, but to me, this one's the prettiest. I'm so happy to have found this, and the manual and everything, I'm just thrilled. And then it works. Oh, man, I'm so happy it works, especially after it's stuff like the broken CRT board. Oh, I was not feeling optimistic about that when I first discovered it. Oh, man. I'm also glad I had the restraint to not plug it in and blow that Refurb cap, because that would have been a mess. Oh, man. But I'm super happy with this thing. It works flawlessly, in my opinion. So, yeah, I'm happy with it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this look at the TRS-80 DT-1 as well. If you want to support the channel, I am on Patreon, but for now, that's it. I'll see you next time.